Chapter 18. Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. The basic economic law of monopoly capitalism, the transition to imperialism, monopoly capitalism emerges. Capitalism shifted from free competition to monopolies dominating the economy in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This stage, called imperialism, is the final stage of capitalism. Technological advancements drive change. Rapid technological progress, new steel production, electricity, internal combustion engine, fueled industrial growth and concentration. Heavy industry takes over. Large-scale industries like metallurgy and engineering, requiring massive capital investment, became dominant, leading to the rise of joint stock companies and further concentration of capital. Global industrial production explodes. World industrial production tripled between 1870 and 1900, driven by steel, coal, and oil production, and facilitated by railway and maritime transport expansion. Shift in global economic power. While Britain initially led, the US and Germany emerged as industrial powerhouses by the late 19th century. Capitalism's contradictions intensify. Overproduction, economic crises, unemployment, and wealth inequality increased, intensifying the class struggle between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Colonialism expands. Capitalist powers seized vast colonial possessions, exploiting resources and people, leading to resistance and wars. Lenin's analysis of imperialism. Lenin identified 5 key features of imperialism: monopolies, finance capital, capital export, international monopolies dividing the world, and completion of the world's territorial division. He saw imperialism as the highest stage of capitalism, ripe for socialist revolution. Concentration of production and monopolies. Monopolies and competition. Concentration of production. Free competition leads to larger enterprises dominating and smaller ones becoming subordinate. This concentration sets the stage for monopolies to emerge. Monopoly formation. Monopolies arise as large enterprises collude to control production and sales, fix prices, and maximize profits. This marks the transition from free competition to imperialism. Monopoly structures. Monopolies take various forms, from simple price-fixing agreements to complex structures like cartels, syndicates, trusts, and concerns. Monopoly dominance. Monopolies control key sectors of capitalist economies, including heavy industry, transportation, banks, and trade. Examples are provided from the US, Britain, Germany, France, and pre-revolutionary Russia. Competition persists. Despite monopolies, competition continues within and between monopolies, and between monopolies and smaller enterprises. This competition becomes even fiercer and more destructive under monopoly capitalism. Contradictions deepen. Monopolies exacerbate the inherent contradictions of capitalism, including the conflict between social production and private appropriation. This leads to more severe economic crises. Socialization of production. Monopolies advance the socialization of production, but the benefits are concentrated in the hands of a few, increasing social inequality and oppression. Concentration and monopoly in banking. The new role of the banks concentrate capital. Like industry, banking undergoes a process of concentration, with large banks absorbing smaller ones and forming monopoly unions. Banks control vast resources. These banking giants accumulate enormous capital, including savings from various social strata, giving them immense economic power. Growing bank deposits. Bank deposits increased dramatically in the early 20th century, reflecting the growing concentration of capital. Examples from the US, Britain, France, and Germany illustrate this trend. Shift in bank-industry relationship. Banks evolve from simple intermediaries to powerful investors in industry, providing large-scale, long-term credit and facilitating the formation of joint stock companies. Banks promote monopolies. By investing heavily in specific industries, banks encourage monopolistic agreements between enterprises, accelerating the concentration of capital and the rise of monopolies. Banks become monopolists. The transformation of banks into powerful monopolists is a key feature of the transition to monopoly capitalism, further solidifying the control of finance capital over the economy. Finance capital and the financial oligarchy. Finance capital emerges. The merging of bank and industrial capital creates finance capital, a defining feature of imperialism. This occurs through banks owning shares in industrial enterprises and vice versa, leading to an intertwining of interests. Lenin's definition. Lenin emphasizes the concentration of production, monopolies, and the merging of banks with industry as key factors in the rise of finance capital. Personal union. The heads of banking and industrial monopolies often hold positions in both sectors, further solidifying the connection between finance and industry. Examples from Germany and the US illustrate this. Finance oligarchy. A small group of powerful bankers and industrialists control vital economic sectors and most of society's wealth, establishing a finance oligarchy that dominates both economic and political spheres. Holding system. Finance oligarchs use the holding system to control vast networks of companies, with a parent company dominating subsidiaries and extending their control over immense capital. The 8 biggest financial groups in the US are presented as an example. Profit accumulation. The finance oligarchy leverages its monopoly position to extract huge profits from various sources, including company creation, stock issuance, government loans, and state contracts. Political dominance. The finance oligarchy exerts significant influence over both domestic and foreign policies of capitalist states, ensuring their interests are prioritized. Export of capital shift from goods to capital export. While pre-monopoly capitalism focused on exporting goods, imperialism is characterized by the export of capital for higher profits. This involves loans to foreign entities and establishing businesses abroad. Causes of capital export. Monopoly domination and the superabundance of capital in developed countries drive capital export. This superabundance is relative, arising from the limitations capitalism places on domestic consumption and agricultural development. Destinations and motivations. Capital is primarily exported to less developed countries with cheap labor, resources, and land, allowing for higher profit extraction. It's often linked to commodity exports, with monopolies pushing their goods onto debtor nations. However, capital is also exported to developed countries experiencing rapid growth or recovering from war. Consequences for debtor countries. While capital export can accelerate capitalist development in less developed countries, it also leads to their exploitation and enslavement by foreign monopolies. This creates a global division between creditor and debtor nations. Consequences for creditor countries. Capital exporting countries increase their wealth and global market position, receiving a steady flow of profits from abroad. However, this can sometimes lead to stagnation in their own industrial development. Global capital export trends. Britain, France, and Germany were the main capital exporters before World War I. After World War I, Germany lost its foreign investments, while U.S. capital export grew significantly, becoming dominant after World War II. Economic division of the world between alliances of capitalists. International monopolies emerge. Growing capital export and expanding spheres of influence for major monopolies lead to the division of the world market among them through international monopoly agreements. These agreements cover market allocation, pricing, and production volume. Increased concentration. International monopolies represent a new level of concentrated production and capital, often formed with active state participation as a tool for economic expansion. False claims of peace. While proponents portray international monopolies as promoting peace, they actually reflect the power dynamics between imperialist groups and countries. Shifting power balances lead to struggles for market redivision and intensified contradictions. Historical growth. International monopolies emerged in the late 19th century, increasing from around 40 at the turn of the century to over 300 before World War II. Examples include agreements in the oil and electrical equipment markets. Role in war and peace. International monopolies, including those in the arms industry, played a significant role in the events leading up to World War II. After the war, new international monopolies were formed to serve U.S. imperialist interests, such as the European Coal and Steel Union. Completion of the territorial. Division of the world among the great powers and the struggle to redivide it. Territorial division. Alongside the economic division of the world, capitalist states engage in a struggle for territorial control, seeking colonies and semi-colonies to exploit. Definitions. Colonies are countries that have lost their independence and become possessions of imperialist powers. Semi-colonies are economically underdeveloped countries that remain formally independent but are subject to economic and political control by imperialist powers. Various degrees of dependency exist. Civilizing mission exposed. The imperialist justification of colonization as a civilizing mission is a sham. In reality, It leads to economic backwardness, oppression, slavery, poverty, and racial discrimination for colonized peoples. Historical perspective. The text provides a historical overview of colonial expansion, highlighting the rapid conquest of territories by European powers, the US and Japan in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. By World War I, over half of humanity was under colonial rule. Methods of control. Imperialist powers used deceit, coercion, and military force to establish and maintain control over their colonies. The history of colonialism is marked by wars of conquest, punitive expeditions, and conflicts between colonial powers. World division complete. By the early 20th century, all free territories had been claimed, leading to a struggle for redivision of the world. This struggle for domination inevitably results in imperialist wars. War and profit. While causing immense suffering and loss of life, imperialist wars and arms races are highly profitable for monopolies, further highlighting the inherent contradictions of capitalism. The basic economic law of monopoly capitalism, monopoly profit maximization. The core of imperialism is the pursuit of maximum profit by monopolies, achieved through intensified exploitation, plunder of resources, and war. This concept builds upon Lenin's work and is formalized by Stalin as the basic economic law of monopoly capitalism. Key features of the law. This law emphasizes securing maximum profit through exploiting the domestic population, robbing less developed countries, waging wars, and militarizing the economy. Shift from average to maximum profit. Unlike pre-monopoly capitalism, where competition led to an average profit rate, imperialism sees monopolies striving for maximum profits, even if it means selling goods below production cost in non-monopolized sectors. Sources of maximum profit. Intensified exploitation. Monopolies maximize profits by intensifying labor exploitation, using techniques like the sweating system to increase surplus value extraction. This leads to higher unemployment and a widening gap between wages and the value of labor. Monopoly pricing. Monopolies charge inflated prices, exceeding production costs and often the value of goods. This redistributes surplus value from non-monopolized sectors and allows monopolies to appropriate productivity gains. Exploitation of peasantry. Monopolies exploit farmers by creating price disparities between agricultural and industrial goods, using tactics like low purchase prices and mortgage credit to extract resources from the countryside. Colonial plunder. Monopolies extract wealth from economically backward and dependent countries through capital investments, non-equivalent exchange, and control over vital sectors like transportation and banking. War and militarization. Wars and arms races generate enormous profits for monopolies through lucrative government contracts and economic mobilization. This intensifies exploitation and lowers living standards for the masses. Consequences. The relentless pursuit of maximum profit under this law exacerbates all contradictions of capitalism, leading to greater inequality, instability, and conflict.